Hi, everyone. Good morning. Next slide, please. Welcome to today's webinar, Educator Wellness, Filling the Well. This webinar is sponsored by the Northeastern Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center, or MHTTC, housed at Rutgers School of Health Professions in the Department of Psychiatric Rehabilitation and Counseling Professions. My name is Kati, and I'm the project coordinator of the center and will be facilitating this webinar today. The MHTTC is funded by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, to enhance the capacity of behavioral health and other related workforces to deliver evidence-based and empirically supported practices to individuals with mental illnesses. We ask that you please visit the MHTTC Network website for additional information at mhttcnetwork.org, and I will also link this, put this link in the chat box for you. Next slide, please. And if you're interested in staying up to date with the events and products that the Northeastern Caribbean MHTTC is providing, we ask that you please sign up to receive our email communications. I will also share the bit.ly link that you see on the screen in the chat box. Next slide, please. Following the webinar, you'll be asked to complete a brief survey. We value this feedback and use it to improve our activities and inform future activities. The surveys are also important because our continued funding is linked to the completion of these surveys, so we thank you in advance for your feedback. Slide, please. We also want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our website along with the PowerPoint slides in the next few days. This presentation was prepared for the Northeastern Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center under a cooperative agreement from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. All material appearing in this presentation, except that taken directly from copyrighted sources, is in the public domain and may be reproduced or copied without permission from SAMHSA or the authors. The citation of this source is appreciated. Do not reproduce or distribute this presentation for a fee without specific written authorization from the Northeastern Caribbean Mental Health Technology Transfer Center. At the time of this presentation, Tom Codir served as Acting Assistant Secretary for Mental Health and Substance Abuse at SAMHSA. The opinions expressed herein are the views of the speakers and do not reflect the official position of the Department of Health and Human Services or SAMHSA. No official support or endorsement of DHHS, SAMHSA for the opinions described in this presentation is intended or should be inferred. Next slide, please. We encourage you to interact with our presenters during their webinar by using the chat feature. Please post any comments or questions you have in the chat, and I will collect your questions as we go and ask them of the presenter during the Q&A time towards the end of the presentation. During the webinar, our presenter may pose questions to you, so please use the chat feature to answer those questions. Next slide. The MHTTC network uses affirming, respectful, and recovery-oriented languages in all activities. This includes language that is strength-based and hopeful, language that is inclusive and accepting of diverse cultures, genders, perspectives, and experiences, language that is healing-centered and trauma-responsive, language that invites individuals to participate in their own recovery journey, language that is person-first and free of labels, language that is non-judgmental and avoids assumptions, language that is respectful, clear, and understandable and consistent with our actions, policies, and products. Now let's begin our webinar. We have Dr. Carabel Sanabria-Velez and Ms. Christy Rydwalski with us today. Dr. Sanabria-Velez is a fully bilingual clinical psychologist. She has over 7 years of clinical and research work performing with federal, community, and nonprofit organizations. Using the knowledge gained with her postdoctoral degree in trauma, she developed and provided workshops, documentation, and psychoeducation with an evidence-based methodology to foster and increase the resiliency of the Puerto Rican population. Carabel has worked on federal proposals targeted at helping minority and Hispanic populations who suffered during and post Hurricane Sandy in New York City. She has also collaborated as a therapist and consultant in the development of new research proposals for projects with the purpose of training mental health specialists in resiliency and trauma post-Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. Ms. Rydwalski joined the MHTTC in 2020 as a school-based training and consultation specialist. Prior to joining the MHTTC team, she supported school teams with coaching, training, and technical assistance in the areas of social emotional learning, school mental health, and positive behavior interventions and support. She brings more than 15 years of experience in implementing and maintaining evidence-based practices in a variety of settings. Ms. Rybowski is passionate about improving the educational and social outcomes for urban communities. She has worked extensively in urban districts of Philadelphia and Newark, working within schools and partnering with many inner city grassroots faith-based organizations and local universities to align school-wide behavioral and mental health efforts within the local community. We once again want to welcome everyone, and I will turn it over to our presenters for today.
Thank you so much, Kadi, and thank you for joining us this morning. I hope that you had a relaxing weekend. Before we start today's training, I really just want to take a moment because I think it's incredibly important to recognize how overwhelming and stressful the last year has been for all of us. I think it's important to acknowledge that educators have been under an enormous amount of stress and pressure. And so with that being said, I really want to take this opportunity, one, to just thank you for all that you do and for being here with us this morning. I think it's also incredibly important that when we talk about wellness or self-care, that we engage in some of those practices throughout the training. And so to prepare our minds for today's workshop, I want to invite you to engage in a mindfulness activity in order to really get calm, relaxed, and ready for today's session. So mindfulness is really just a mental state that's achieved by focusing on one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations. So this is one of my very, very favorite mindfulness activities. It's actually called Leaves on a Stream. And so in a couple of minutes, what you'll see on your screen is just a video of a stream. All you have to do in this moment is just follow my voice and my direction. Actually, for the purposes of this exercise too, I like to stop my video so you won't necessarily be able to see me, but you'll be able to hear me. And we'll get started in just a second here. I invite you to sit in a comfortable position and either close your eyes or rest them gently on a fixed spot in the room that you're in. I want you to just visualize yourself sitting beside a gently flowing stream with leaves floating along the surface of the water. For the next few minutes, take each thought that enters your mind and place it on a leaf. And let that leaf float by. Do this with each thought, be it pleasurable, painful, neutral. Even if you have joyous or enthusiastic thoughts, place them on a leaf and let them float by. If your thoughts momentarily stop, continue to watch the stream. Sooner or later, your thoughts will start up again. Allow the stream to flow at its own pace. Don't try to speed it up and rush your thoughts along. You're not trying to rush these along or get rid of your thoughts. You are allowing them to come and go at their own pace. If your mind says, this is dumb, I'm bored, or I'm not doing this right, place those thoughts on leaves too, and let them pass. If a leaf gets stuck, allow it to hang around until it's ready to float by. If the thought comes up again, watch it float by another time. If a difficult or painful feeling arises, simply acknowledge it. Say to yourself, I notice myself having a feeling of boredom or impatience, frustration, and place those thoughts on leaves and allow them to float along. From time to time, your thoughts may hook you and distract you from being fully present in this exercise. This is completely normal, as you should realize that you have become sidetracked. Gently bring your attention back to this exercise. All right, I'm going to stop here. I hope that exercise made you feel a little bit calm. Again, allowing you to release any thoughts that may have been racing in your mind from the weekend, and really has prepared your mind for today's workshop. So our objectives for today is to really identify how educators have been affected by current times in terms of burnout, compassion fatigue, and secondary trauma. To be able to recognize the signs and symptoms of these conditions and identify practical strategies for taking care of yourself and creating a personal self-care plan. So before we get started with that, I wanted to launch a poll question for all of you. And just to get a sense of, from the audience, what has been your biggest challenge this year? So in a few seconds, what you'll see come up on your screen is the question and different options that you can select. Please keep in mind that this is all anonymous. So we can't see who's necessarily responding. The results just come in as a poll. And then at the end of the poll, I'll be able to actually share the results with you so you'll be able to see. So I see some of the results coming in. Thank you so much for your participation. Right now we have, let's see, financial being in the lead with about 32% of folks saying that. Work-life balance, absolutely. I know that's been quite a challenge for all of us. Having to adapt to this new normal. Great. So I'm going to actually, it looks like we have mostly everybody responded. Thank you so much. And I'm going to share these results with you so then that way you can see here. So you'll see that most folks said, yeah, actually work-life balance and financial were, running, definitely running side by side there. We have 26%. It looks like of folks said that parenting, yes, absolutely. We know that that was quite a challenge in addition to working from home. Yes, definitely. So thank you so much for sharing. I think it's always great for us as the presenters to also know, some of the challenges that you've been facing this school year.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Carabelle, and nevertheless, I'm gonna begin saying thank you to Christy to providing that meditation. It was very good, very relaxing, and it's very important for us to do self-care. And this is one of the practices that we can do in our morning. So now we're gonna do something. How are we feeling ourselves today? You can tell me physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritual. You can write it in the chat box. I'm gonna start with myself. Physically, I'm feeling very energetic, very relaxing after hearing that part of the meditation first. So it was very good. Mentally, I feel openness and I feel very engaged in the process that we are gonna do right now. Emotionally, I feel like very good because I think it is very important to be able to share self-care. Christy, do you want to share with us how you're feeling?
Absolutely. I would say physically, I'm feeling energetic and ready to start the week ahead. Mentally, I would say, even leading that exercise always leaves me feeling very relaxed. So I think it's twofold. Like we obviously do it for the audience, but I think it helps us as well as presenters to feel very relaxed kind of going into the presentation. Emotionally, I would say that I feel calm, right? So I feel very calm. And spiritually, I feel hopeful. I feel very hopeful. So that's definitely how I'm feeling today. Let's see if we can get some folks from the audience to type into the chat. And you don't necessarily have to answer all of them, but maybe just share, how you're feeling physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually.
So it is very important. And the why we're asking about all this is because we are a whole. We are part of mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. So that's very important to us to understand that we are part of and everything, and that we can feel mentally okay, but sometimes physically we don't feel that good, and that's okay. And that part is very important. You can practice this check-in every morning with your coworkers. I've seen people saying that physically they feel tired, they feel calm,
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
deep. So that's very important to be able to share what we are experiencing. We don't have to be 100% okay. We don't have to be completely fine. That's wonderful that we are able to see it that way. Also, that's very important. I've seen people saying comfortable and peace, mentally exhausted. That's very normal also. And that part as well, when you can practice this at your work, and it's very good. Like right now, for example, Christy and I, we can be together and I can say, Christy, you know what? Mentally, I'm kind of drained at this point, or I kind of exhausted at this point. So what I'm saying to my coworker is also that maybe I will need a little bit of help in some parts, or I could be tired and they can help me in that process. And I hope that we can provide you today those skills that we can help you. How can we do a little bit better, and how we can be working together as partners? So that's very good. People are saying tired, so that's very good, okay? So we're gonna start talking about Beth Hartman Stam, and he provided our professional quality of life. And research has shown that our quality as a professional would tell us how we're feeling and how we are working. So we have two difference. We have compassion, satisfaction, and compassion fatigue. Compassion satisfaction is that how I feel in the work, and when I feel very good, very energetic, and I feel that I'm providing everything very good. And compassion fatigue is that feeling that I'm feeling a little bit more tired, and it's not that great because I cannot provide 100% how I want to feel. And from that, it can develop burnout, and it can develop secondary trauma. So it is very important to us to really understand this, because we can feel that we have all that energy, and that we feel that we are providing all that important parts in ourselves, and we are providing that satisfaction, and it feels good to be there for our kids, our family, our clients, our co-workers, our friends. But also we can develop compassion fatigue, and that's what we're gonna be talking right now a little bit. So compassion fatigue is a state of experience by those helping people or animals in distress. It is an extreme state of tension, preoccupation with the suffering of those being helped, to the degree that it can create secondary traumatic stress for the helper. So what does that mean? What it really means, really? So when we are hurting other people, sometimes we can get that stress and we can take it home, and we can be drained because of that. If we don't take care of ourselves, if we don't see ourselves, and we do self-care practice, we can become have secondary trauma, we can have burnout, we can have compassion fatigue, and that's very important. So which one are the indicators of that in compassion fatigue? So we have behavioral indicators, we have physical, work performance, personal relationship, cognitive, emotional, spiritual. And you know what? It's very important, each part of them. So we can have, in behavior, we can feel like we are burnout, like we are sleep deprivation, that we have nightmares, that we have changes in appetite, that we cannot eat appropriately, we feel withdrawal without something. Physically, we feel sweating, we feel tired, increase of heart rate, muscle ache or pains, work performance, we feel low, we don't want to provide everything sometimes, or we don't work as we used to, as the potential that we are used to working like that. Sometimes we will have arguments, or we will not understand each other in the work area. We feel negatively, having difficulties, and that's really, really okay. So that's part of it, and it's important for us to understand these indicators. Personal relationship, sometimes we will not be able to be with them. We will not be able to participate with each other. We will be having angers, irritable, so that's very important to us. Cognitive, we feel low concentration, no more that attention, disorientation. So all of that is very important. Emotional, feeling powerless, heavily angry, or sometimes being fearful, feeling helplessness. Spiritual, we feel like we don't have that loss of purpose, or that heavily connected with our spiritual guidance. So it is very important to us to identify this. What I do sometimes, if I feel like you know what, I'm getting to work and I feel already exhausted without really being there for 10 minutes, that's an indicator for me that something is not I supposed to. If I have a coworker and we talk every morning and that morning I'm like, oh my God, they come again, they have a lot of problems, they're gonna tell me. So if that happens to you, or if you want to ask something about, or you need to give them a paper and you feel that you don't want to do it, then we have to see if that is an indicator or it's just one day and it's okay. But all these things is very important to us to have like a checklist to see it. So now I'm gonna leave you with my coworker here that she's gonna talk a little bit more about burnout.
Thank you, Carabelle. So I think it's really important to mention also that compassion fatigue can easily lead to burnout and secondary trauma. And so when we think about burnout, it really is a special type of work-related stress. It's really a state of like physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion caused by long-term, right? And I think that's a really important piece to mention. It's long-term, right? Exposure to demanding work situations. It's a sense of reduced accomplishment and kind of a loss of even your personal identity. So while burnout has something to do with, right, like stress and overdoing things and not being centered, I really believe that it also has a lot to do with not being able to or feeling disconnected from one's calling or purpose. And we know as educators that, and I include myself and Carabelle in that group as well, right? It's, you know, we feel that it is our purpose to help, right? And to service our communities and our children. So this actually is what prompts me to ask this question, because I think that it is incredibly important when having this conversation that we also talk about or remember what is our why. And so, you know, just having a moment to reflect back when you first started out as an educator, what was the reason? Why did you become an educator? What made you want to become an educator? So really think about that for a moment. And when you have that response, type it in the chat. What was your why? Why did you want to become an educator? And I'll give folks just a few minutes to respond. I know it takes a minute to gather our thoughts and type at the same time. So we see some responses coming in to help others. Absolutely. Oh, I love that. Oh my goodness, to help the way I wish I was helped as a kid. Yes, definitely, to make a difference. There's a quote, I think, that even says that, you know, be the adult that you wish you had as a child. That was a powerful statement. Thank you for sharing that. To make a difference, somebody said, I wanted to become a school counselor because I wanted to help others. Absolutely. To influence positivity and to help children. Joy. Oh my goodness. Yes, the joy you feel working with young people, right? And being a change agent. Absolutely. To spread the love of God. Oh, I love that. To help children grow as people, to become successful in life, and to be a guide to children in a positive way. Absolutely, guys. These are wonderful responses. And I think it's incredibly important when we start to feel this burnout, and we'll talk a little bit about what are the causes of burnout, that we have those opportunities to really reflect on our why and our purpose. So here are some causes of burnout. When we talk about lack of control, we're just talking about really just this inability to control your schedule or your workload, or my goodness, I mean, we just, we're at the tail end, right, hopefully, of the pandemic. And, you know, even thinking about that, I mean, we didn't really have much control over, you know, where we were able to go for a period of time, or even the items we were able to buy. I mean, if you remember in the very beginning, it was like we couldn't even find the basic things that we needed, right? And so this like lack of control or inability to control is a cause of burnout as well, or a dysfunctional workplace dynamics, right? So maybe, not feeling necessarily safe or supported in your work environment, or maybe feeling constantly being undermined. And that's why I think it's so incredibly important for school systems to really, really, focus on creating healthy school environments, not just for our kids, right, but for the adults as well. Or extremes in activity is really talking about when your job is chaotic and you need this like constant energy to remain focused. So burnout, here are some just risk factors related to burnout. High workload, including overtime work. I think that we've all kind of felt that when we've had to make that shift to, kind of do our work virtually, trying to be everything to everyone. So, managing your households. I know even due to the pandemic, for financial reasons, a lot of folks took people into their homes, right? That were maybe family members that either lost their jobs or, so just trying to be everything to everybody, working in a help profession, those things as well. Feeling like you have no or little control over your work. We kind of talked about that a little bit. So when we think about burnout, what does it look like? So it is this, and again, I'm sure that we've all had this feeling before, but remember, it's really this feeling over a extended period of time, right? So having to drag yourself out of bed to go to work, this lack of energy to do your job, right? When you've lost this like enthusiasm, the difficulty concentrating, so things that maybe came naturally to you before, maybe you're struggling with a little bit now, or feeling kind of disillusioned about your job, or somatic complaints. That's really just referring to feelings of panic or breathlessness or chest pains. So just shifting gears a little bit here, and we talk, like I said, when we talk about compassion fatigue and understanding that it can lead to burnout and secondary traumatic stress. And so secondary traumatic stress is the second component of compassion fatigue. It is the emotional duress that results when an individual hears about this firsthand trauma experiences of another. Secondary traumatic stress is the result of difficult and or painful interactions with, it could be students, it could be the community, it can be the families as well, right, that we serve. So what other professions do you think, we obviously know that educators can experience secondary traumatic stress, but what other professions do you think experience secondary traumatic stress? What other professions do we think? You can drop those in the chat. Because we are definitely not alone in this. Medical app, yes. Police officers, yep. Police officers, firefighters, doctors. My father is actually a sergeant in a large urban city, so absolutely. When working in a help profession, right? Teaching is a help profession. Doctors, nurses, police officers, social workers, right? It is very, very easy for us to feel this secondary traumatic stress, especially when we're hearing about things that are impacting our students and our families. So what does it look like? Typically, it's a rapid onset. That just means that it happens rather quickly. Generally, it's associated with a particular event that maybe happens. Being more afraid of things, changes in our sleep and our appetite. It's not unlikely to have reoccurring images of this upsetting event, or even avoidance, right? Trying to avoid things that necessarily remind you of that event as well. And I want to turn it over to Carabelle now, so then that way she can kind of actually, because I'm sure you saw some overlap in some of the things that we were talking about, but I'm going to turn it over to her, so then that way she does an amazing job of just explaining and comparing, all of the things that we just covered.
So it is very important for us to understand like compassion fatigue. Well, it is working with that traumatized patient, or in our case, with the students or with the parents that are passing to our extremely events sometimes. And that can cause secondary trauma or burnout. And burnout is just being with the ambient, the environment that we are working on it. If we are working a lot of hours, if we are not providing that healthy self-care with our coworkers, that can cause burnout in a long term. It's not only one day, it will be a long term. And secondary trauma, if somebody is sharing one of their experience with us, it can cause that exposure of trauma from a second hand, it causes secondary trauma. So it is very important for us to understand this difference, because I can feel compassion fatigue and not feel burnout or not feel secondary trauma, or I can feel secondary trauma and not burnout. So we can be feeling even one of them or none of them, and it is okay. So I can feel burnout and maybe I don't feel that much of compassion fatigue at this moment because I have developed burnout. So that's very important in that aspect. Because also compassion fatigue is more personal, is stress related with compassion. Like I want to help this person very good and I want to provide everything that I have in my mind and I want to help them. It's an internal factor is with us inside. And is more related about when we are working with that person that needs a lot of help from us. In the case of burnout, is more organizational, is stress related with the demands. Sometimes we don't have those demands and what we have to do really explained to us, or we don't have those deadlines really explained to us in that aspect. So it's more an external factors and it will be more about the environment that is around us. And the secondary trauma is more related when we are talking about something that is traumatized and we can have those like images in ourselves or being worried that that could happen to us. So that's more important in that aspect. Remember, if you have any questions, just you can ask them in the chat box and we can talk a little bit more. Okay, so next slide, please. So now we're gonna practice a little bit of timeout. So we're gonna go out for 5 minutes. We're gonna go to drink water. We're gonna go out of the room that we are right now. I want you to walk a little bit. We're gonna have a break for 5 minutes. And when we come back, I want you to share with us, what is your favorite meal in your favorite restaurant? When you go out to eat, tell me about a healthy habit that you have. What is a healthy thing that you can eat and share with us? So now we have, it is 9:11, right?
Yes.
So we're gonna have a 5-minute breaks. So everybody can stand up, walk a little bit, go drink water. If you need to go to the bathroom, it's very important to do that. And we will be right back in 5
And while you're
minutes.
on break, don't just for the next activity, you'll probably need a piece of paper and a pencil. So if you could grab that as well, just so then that way we're prepared when we start back up.
Yes. Hi, everybody. We are back. Can everybody share with me what is your favorite healthy meal when you go out? Can you share with me, Christy? What do you like to eat when you're out?
So this one place I love to go to, and believe it or not, it's very reasonably priced. And it's a salad with like fresh veggies, like broccoli and green peppers, right, red peppers, and shrimp, like this grilled shrimp to perfection. It's amazing. One of my favorites. What about you?
So for me, I like to eat salmon, so it's very good for me.
Mhm,
So I like to have that and vegetables. I like
mhm.
broccoli especially. I love it. But for me, that it's like a go for it.
Like if you see that on the menu, I'll take
Yeah,
that.
I go, yes, that's
Yes.
mine. So, you know what? Being able to be in a webinar just like this of self-care and to be able to, I was able to go out and see the sunlight today, and it's very good. So that's very good for us. And I would say that being able to stretch out, get out of the room, and walk a little bit can help us get more attention, being able to be aware of how we're feeling. Being also, maybe I was just thinking about I'm thirsty, so I will get up. I could be able to drink a little bit of water, and that will help us to be more in our 100% and being able to reduce that compassion fatigue and being able to reduce to get burnout or secondary traumas. That's very good.
Mhm. Yeah, and
So
I just
now
want
we're
to add
gonna
to
be
that.
talking.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that too, Carabelle, that, self-care is really about being mindful and self-aware of how you're feeling. Because I think all too often, and the rush of life and trying to get things done, that it is easy for us to ignore, right, how we're feeling. So I think it's about really being mindful and self-aware, and then intentional, right? The intention, you have to be intentional to take action in those moments. And I never forget a time when I was, this wasn't with this position, it was like another position that I had, and it required me to travel from school to school to school, right? So I was constantly in the car and I was traveling, and I had deadlines to meet and reports to get done. And I remember not feeling well. I wasn't feeling well at the time. And, I kept going though. And then eventually my body just started to break down. I went to the doctors and she said, you have a fever. Like you've been, I think my fever was like 101, right? And she's like, you've been out and about all day long. And, I was like, wow, in that moment, just not, like I said, being mindful and self-aware. I was so focused on trying to get things done, not paying attention to how I was feeling or how my body was feeling. And that's really too what mindfulness is all about, right? People think mindfulness is just meditation, but no, mindfulness is being present in the moment and being aware of how your body is feeling, and how are you feeling mentally, emotionally, like Carabelle says, spiritually, and so all of those things.
And
Um,
it's very good for us if we have in the morning that check-in with our coworkers and they're
yes.
saying that they don't feeling good. It's good for us if we are seeing that they are struggling with things. Just, you know what? We should just take 5 minute break and we just walk out a little bit and just get out, go drink a little bit of water, go to the bathroom and come back. Probably when we having our questions and where we are a little bit stuck in that process of thinking, it would be feeling very good. It can help us to get and feel better. And it's being mindful of how I'm feeling and how can I can being able to self-care. That part is very important. It's not only like, okay, I will understand. I have to meditate. I have to be physical. I have to do all these things that they're saying. It's also getting that break that it's very important and being able to identify how I'm feeling today.
Mhm.
So that's
Yeah,
very good.
absolutely. And keeping in mind that children model our behavior. So they model how to manage stress by watching us, right? And so that's why I love, you know, the concept of social emotional learning in schools, because it's really, you know, modeling and teaching our students how to be aware of how they're feeling. And like Carabelle said, doing those check-ins, you know, and so, you know, having those emotion checks in the morning, you know, with your colleagues, but also with your class too, is a great way to model, you know, some of these self-care practices as well.
And it will help you because once we identify how we're feeling, they're going to be able to identify themselves. How are they feeling at that moment? So that it's going to be very, very good.
So I hope you have your piece of paper and pencil, because this is when you'll need it. What we're going to do now, probably for the next actually like 15 minutes or so, if not longer, we're going to actually walk you through the professional quality of life scale. This scale was really designed and created to measure compassion, satisfaction, burnout, and secondary traumatic stress. And so this scale is really considered one of the gold standard measures of work-related stress. And so that's really why we like to incorporate it into our trainings, because I think it's incredibly important for us to have or take that moment of self-reflection to really tap in to how we're doing. And what better way than, you know, to use kind of like a self-assessment. So I'm going to go to this slide here. And I will kind of walk you through, well, I kind of explain how it goes in a second. And then Carabelle, if you could talk about the scale a little bit too, so folks understand how to kind of mark things down. But so essentially when we help people, we have direct contact with their lives, right? And as many of you may have found, your compassion for those you help can affect you in a positive and negative way. So below, actually on all of our slides, we have some questions about your experiences, both positive and negative, as a helper. So what we just want you to do is consider each of the following questions about you and your current work situation. And we want you to think about this within the last 30 days. So I know it's right. I know it's hard to do that because I think our minds naturally think about like this whole last year. But we really want you to just think about, as you're answering this, within the last 30 days. And Carabelle, can you just explain to them a little bit about how they should mark things down and how the scale, you know, how to use the scale?
Yeah, so now we have in this slide from 1 to 10, and in the other slide we have the other items, and we're gonna read the first one just to make an example. I am happy. So do I feel happy right now? 1 will be never, 2 will be rarely, 3 be sometimes, 4 be often, and 5 be very often. I feel happy. I will say often. So in that way, number 1 will be 4. Okay, so we can write a piece of paper, a pen, or a pencil, and we can write in number 1, we could write 4, and so on. So for example, number 2 will be, I am preoccupied with more than one person I help. So that will be, in my case, rarely right now. I don't preoccupy more about one person. So in that case, my number 2 will be 2.
Yes, I just saw something come through the chat. Absolutely. We can send you a copy of the actual survey. So we'll definitely pass that along. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
So I think you answered 1 and 2, right, Carabelle? So for me,
Yes.
I would say, I am happy. So I would answer that with a 4, right? And then for number 2 is, am I preoccupied with more than one person? So for myself, I'm a parent. So I would say a 5, right? Very often, because I'm taking care of I'm taking care of my daughter. So just make sure that you write down the number right, that you select for your response. Because what'll happen is at the end, we'll need to add those numbers up. So then that way you'll actually get a score.
So we are gonna answer them with you. So that means that we also gonna have them with you. So it will be very nice. For example, number 3 says, I get satisfied for being able to help other people. Yes, I feel very satisfied. So that will be a 5 in my case, and so on. When you are able to finish 1 to 10, just tell us in the chat that you were able to finish answering those items so we can go to the next one. If somebody missed one of them, don't worry, we can come back. So when you finish answering 1 to 10, just let us know. We only need the numbers at this moment, okay?
Carabelle and Christy, I also just want to let you know, I did share the document in the chat.
Oh, thank you so much.
For others to see in their own reader. So just wanted to.
Yep, that's perfect, Kadi. Thank you. I see some folks said that they're finished. We'll still give you some more time. About another 2 minutes. All right, 1 more minute.
I want you to feel free if there's one of the items that you have any questions or you have any doubts on what it really means, being able to provide that question in the chat so we can provide you with any clarity if we have anything, okay?
All right, so I think we're ready to move to the next section here. So that starts with number 11, same scale. So number 11 just says, because of my helping, I have felt on edge about various things.
So in my case, I would say that sometimes that happens and that's okay.
Yes, I would say, I would probably say the same for me too. You can tell Carabelle and I have these conversations often. But I would say number 12, I like my work as a helper, a 5, very often. Yeah. I think there is such a rewarding feeling, you know, after we finish like sessions like this, Carabelle, or after I've done, like we've done trainings also for parents, right? That, you know, we get like this great feedback, and it's such a great feeling to know that people kind of appreciate, you know, and it was helpful, especially during or considering the last year that we've had.
Yeah, and it is very important for us. I think that taking that time also, and not only, okay, I'm gonna be here in this webinar about self-care and the importance of that, but also being able to see that for us, we do it to each other. Like every time I share with Christy or we are gonna be in a meeting, I always say, how are you feeling? How are things going on? If one of us feel like we are kind of disconnected, we ask each other. how it's going on. Are things good? Can I help you in any way? And that will be very important to us in that process.
Great. I see responses starting to come in that folks are finishing up this section too. So we'll still give it about maybe another 2 minutes or so. Nice job, everyone. I see those responses. Thank you. All right, so I see them coming in. I'll wait another 2 minutes. And then we'll move on to the next section. Okay, 1 more minute. All right, so let's move on to the next section here. So you'll see that starts with 21. So 21 says, I feel overwhelmed because my case or my workload seems endless. So when you complete, you should have a total of 30 responses.
And remember that most of these things is from the last 30 days, because sometimes we can read this and we can see like, yeah, maybe I feel like this, but not today.
Right, exactly.
So it happens to me also. Sometimes you read something and you're like, in my other job, this will be a 5. Or you remember in this month that we needed to close up a lot of things, maybe I was feeling like this. And that's very important also for us, being able to identify when we are feeling what and how is our experience in that process.
And how often?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I see the responses coming in. So we'll wait another like 2 minutes or so, and then we'll move on to the scoring portion of this. Okay, one more minute.
If any of you have missed one items from the previous slide, just let us know if we have to go back before we start with the scoring process. If you need it, just let us know. We can review the other slides just in case. So be sure that you have the answer each of the items because we need all of them to be scored in this process.
Yes, absolutely. I saw that, the first slide. Yep. So questions 1 through 10.
Yes, correct.
Yep, not a problem.
Just everybody review it. You have answered all of them. If you have anyone that you were just thinking a little bit and you want to review it again, you can ask us to put that slide and we can put it again just to be sure of our answer. Please, and when you finish reviewing those, just let us know. No pressure, so take your time.
So maybe what I'll do, Carabelle, is I'll leave this up for like another minute or so, and then I'll move to the second one just in case. And then we'll make our way to the scoring.
Yes.
So I think it is a good idea, like Carabelle said, to review your responses. And, you know, answer honestly. Be honest with yourself. I found myself even like when I'm completing this sometimes, I'm like, oh, I'm, you know, teetering back and forth between one or the other. And so, you know, I'm like, I have to be honest with myself.
And you can write like, it comes to your mind, like you read a sentence and you're like, this is a 4. And then when you think it, you say, no, maybe a 5. You know what? Just go with the 4. That's what comes to your mind. That was your conscious telling you what is the best answer. And it's okay.
So I'm going to go to the through 11 through 20, just in case folks need it. Okay, just one more minute with this slide. Okay, I think we're good to go. So let's go to the scoring. So the way that this is broken down is by each individual section that we talked about. So remember, we talked about compassion, fatigue, we talked about burnout. So this, you'll see that it grouped the items that are related to compassion. So Carabelle, I don't know if you just want to explain really quickly the process for adding this up and then letting folks know, you know, kind of where they would fall.
Yeah. Like right now, what we're gonna do is the item number 3. For example, in my case, I answered 5. And in answer number 6, I answered 2. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna add those responses. Like in my case, the 3, I was answered 5, and the 6, I answered 2. So that will be, and we could keep adding them, all of them, until it will be there. Item 3, 6, 12, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 27, and 30. So what we're gonna be, we will be adding what we respond on that scale from 1 to 5. It's only the number that we're gonna be adding. If you have any questions, you just write them in the chat and we can see, okay? I'm gonna add mine so we can use them, for example.
Yep. And that is going to give you a sum. And then from there, we'll talk about the levels of compassion.
Yes. So
I have one question. Maybe one. Let's see. Oh, okay. Saying finished. Yep.
okay.
You can look.
In my case, in compassion, I was in the average. I was like 25. So that means that I am in the middle level of compassion fatigue. That means that I'm not low, but I'm not also high. just in there. And it's good for me to understand what it means. What it means is that I have some compassion fatigue at this moment, but not that high. So that means that maybe from those identified that we talk a little bit early, I will feel some of them. And I can understand that, you know what? Sometimes I feel tired, or sometimes when I'm working with other people, I have those thoughts in my mind that I want to provide them with everything that I can. And that's okay. Were you able to do it, Christy?
I actually didn't write down all of my scores, but one thing I do want to mention is that, and we talked about this a little bit, so that this part of the survey, you know, that the compassion satisfaction is really about the pleasure you derive from being able to do your work well. And so, for example, you may feel like it is a pleasure to help others do your work, right? Or you may feel positively about your colleagues or your ability to contribute to the work setting, or even the greater good of society, right? So one thing that I always feel positively about is presenting with Carabelle, right? So higher scores on this scale represent a greater satisfaction related to your ability to be an effective caregiver in your job. So if you're on the higher range, you probably derive a good deal of professional satisfaction from your position. If your scores are below 23, you may either find problems with your job, or there may be some other reasons, for example, that you've derived your satisfaction from activities other than your job. So that's just something to keep in mind, that if your scores are below 23, that, you know, you're going to be kind of lower on that scale. And that's something to be, you know, in tune to and aware of. I think we have one. I didn't see that come through. Oh, okay, done. Somebody just said done. Okay, perfect. Any questions before we move on to burnout, the burnout section of the scale? Okay. All righty, so I'll move on to that section, but of course, if anything comes up, please let us know. More than happy to answer those things.
So in this one is a little bit kind of tricky. You are seeing in the slide that we have items that have like a little star. That means that those items will be scored like a reverse. That means that if you write 1, like 1, it was never, then we will give you 5 points. If you answer 2 sometimes, then you will only add 4. Okay, you will change that number. And so long. If you have any questions, just let me know. For example, in my case, the number 1 was, the item was, the number 1 was, is if I am happy. So I write number 4 was my answer. That was often. For this case, for burnout, to add them, I will only add 2 points to that one. So only for the ones that have the star, we're gonna reverse those scores. For the other ones, we're just gonna add them as it is. For number 8, for example, I answer rarely, so that means that it will only be added 2, okay? If you have any questions, just let me know in the chat box.
And so for the items that you need to reverse the score, that would be for, because I don't know how, you know, if you can see it on your screen very well, the little asterisk, but it's for item 1, 4, 15, 17, and 29. So I'll say that again, it's for items 1, 4, 15, 17, and 29. Those are the items where you need to reverse the score. All the other items, you would score it just like we did previously. Thank you so much for letting us know. I see the responses coming in that folks are finishing up. I'm still wait just a few minutes. Nice job, everyone. I see them coming in the chat. So something to keep in mind with this score or this scale is that the higher scores on this scale mean that you are at a higher risk for burnout. Okay, so if your score is below 23, this is probably reflects positive feelings about your ability to effectively do your job. And if your score is above 41, you may wish to think about what at work makes you feel like you are not effective in your position. And your score may reflect your mood, right? So perhaps, you know, the day started off a little bit bad, or you're in need of some time off. Hey, listen, I know it's the tail end of the school year, and you're right, we might be like the last 30 days may have been a whirlwind, right? Just wrapping things up for the year. I remember that when I was working in schools. So, you know, that could also be, right, an indication of just feeling like, ooh, I really need this summer, you know, this summer break or this summer vacation.
And also can be that those numbers can be affected if you are doing a lot of self-care. Like if you are able to take walks, if you are able to take breaks in your work area, if you are able to have that support from a co-worker, that could be very, very effective in this part. Well, it doesn't mean that if you have a high one, it means that you're burnt out, but it seems like you have a lot of things that could, indicators that can be addressed in the burnout part, okay? So it's just more, doesn't mean that this is a diagnosis that you have burnout, but it means that you have a lot of indicators that you will be feeling burnout in this moment. If somebody have any questions, you can just ask them. Let us know you were able to finish so we can go to the next slide.
I think we had several folks say that they were finished.
Okay.
Maybe we can go to the next one. I'm also paying attention to the time too. So we'll go to the next one, which is secondary trauma. And now for this one, Carabelle, we don't need to reverse the scores. It's just as is. Yep.
Yes, we're gonna just add them as we answer them. Okay, so we will add items 2, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 14, 23, 25, and 28. And I would say that, for example, secondary trauma, it is kind of difficult when you have like in the schools right now with all that is happening, and you have the kids talk to you about what is happening to them with their families, especially when you are reading a story and they take and describe you what's happening in their house. It is very, sometimes we can feel that secondary trauma. And it is important for us to see these items as indicators also. This doesn't mean that if you have a higher level, it doesn't mean that you have secondary trauma, but it means that you are able to identify those indicators at this moment in your life.
Okay, we have some responses coming in that folks are finishing up. So like Carabelle mentioned, if your score is coming in above, you may want to just take some time to think about what at work, may be causing these feelings of maybe being frightened or worried. And like she mentioned, while higher scores do not mean that you have a problem, there's just an indication that you really want to take that moment to you kind of examine how you feel about your work and your work environment. And I think what's really powerful about completing this assessment is also just realizing too, and we'll get to this in the next slide when we kind of start to unpack what the collective score was, is just thinking about how can we as a larger community, right, create these communities of compassion, create or embed self-care practices into our work. How can we incorporate these things into our professional development? How can we incorporate these things into the classroom, right? How do they become a part of our everyday practice in schools? And so that it's not necessarily an afterthought, right? But it's something that becomes a part of our culture and our community within the building.
Yeah, and it is very important for us to just being able to identify them. You know what? The first time that I did this, it was very important that I just read the sentence and sometimes I was like, I didn't know the answer of that moment. I wasn't able to answer it. And that's very important also for us to see it. You know, sometimes that could happen. And you will say, how often can I do this? You know what? Every time you feel that you are kind of something is happening and you want to know a little bit more about if, you know what, maybe if you know when your coworkers start saying to you or your family, you know what, you feel, I, I think that you're kind of burned out. It will be a good moment to do this screening for yourself and to see if you can identify those so you can take care of yourself. That will be very, very helpful.
Such a good, yes, yes, such a good point, Carol. Okay, so what we'll do is just take a moment to reflect and think about what did your scores tell you? You know, were your scores which you thought they would be?
Yeah. For example, in my case, I did it with you guys, and for me, in compassion fatigue, I was in the middle. Burnout, I was kind of low, but you know why? Because I have incorporated self-care. And I was able, at one moment, I was feeling kind of burnout or very tired. And I talked to my coworker, to Christy, and I say, you know what, Christy, I think that I need that support sometimes, and we can do check-ins. How are you feeling? How are things going on? Um, and that will be very important.
I would say it's like a friendly reminder. I love that Carabelle, and this is even something to think about, you know, at the bottom of her emails, like if we're corresponding about something, she'll send me a reminder, right? Like, don't forget your self-care tonight, or, you know, what are you doing for self-care? You know, and I thoroughly appreciate that, because it is a general reminder to myself, right? To take that moment and pause. And even if it's for 5 minutes makes a huge difference. I was on another call, or I think it was a webinar, and somebody said, well, you know, where do you even begin? Right? Like, what does it look like? And we said, hey, listen, it could be 5 minutes a day. You start there, and you'll start to see these gradual shifts in how you're starting to feel. And it can be that incredibly impactful. Small steps.
Yeah, and that's very helpful. You know what? Sometimes it's just little steps. Like, you know what? If you have meetings back to back, it is okay to say, you know what? I'm gonna have 5 minutes. And just say it in the meeting, like, you know what? I think that I just came from another meeting and I need just 2 minutes to go and grab water or go to the bathroom. And even that sometimes it doesn't feel okay to do it, it will help you. It will help the community to be able to have that time. It will be able, and you can develop a community of self-care.
Yes, yep, absolutely. So, so these are just kind of some reflection questions. You don't necessarily have to share those things in the chat. You know, your scores are, you know, obviously your own, but these are just some things to kind of think about, you know, after you complete the assessment, even at a later date. So now we're going to shift just into some wellness strategies and, you know, some ways that we can incorporate these things into our day-to-day routines and into the larger school community as a whole.
Yeah, we have talked already about compassion fatigue, burnout, secondary trauma. We see how those indicators are in our life. So now it's time to do our wellness strategies, and we will be awareness, balance, and connection. And we can see here in this picture how physically being able to eat healthy, being able to how I'm feeling in this moment, be compassionate, and also be taking care of ourselves. So in our case, we're gonna see awareness, and you're gonna see strategies for us to be more aware of ourselves, and that will be practice mindfulness. We have practiced one here in our webinar in the beginning. We were able to take those minutes and be able to hear a little bit of music and be able to close your eyes and be able to see what we were happening at this moment. Keep a journal. You know what? Sometimes people ask me, how can I start a journal? You know what? At the beginning, it was very difficult for me too, and I'm a psychologist. So what do? I just write, I have a note, a post-it, and I write how I'm feeling in the morning and in the afternoon. If I'm feeling good or sad or hungry or tired. And that could be the first thing of a journal, just that. You don't have to write a whole page. You don't have to have like a big paragraph of things. It could be only a sentence and it's okay. Meditation, there's a lot of people saying that they meditate. You know what? Meditation could be just hearing a song, just like Christy did, put like river sounds and just trying to get your mind in blank and being able to feel that you are there, or just closing your eyes and visualizing what your favorite things is. And that is very good. Just being able to close your eyes. And for example, in my case, I love the beach. So when I used to live in New York, I remember just closing my eyes and think about my hometown in Puerto Rico, and being able to see that will provide me joy and calm. Write down your goals, because sometimes we want to do a lot of things and we do a lot of to-do lists. But you know what? It's also very important for us to just write our goals. You know what? For this month, I want just to be able to provide these strategies to my kids, or to be able to share with them this, if to make them learn this part, to being able to read to them and being able to hear them read. And how I'm going to plan that? You know what? Because if we plan those things and we put a few times for us also to self-care in that plan, we can reduce burnout. So that's very important. A gratitude practice. You know what? When I go to bed every night with my husband, before we go to sleep, we say two things, but we are grateful in the day. And you know what? Also, I practice gratitude with my coworkers. Like Christy was saying, I will tell her, take care of yourself this weekend. I hope that you're not seeing this email at this moment, or I hope that you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
That is very important. Yeah. And a daily reflection is also, how was my day? You know what? I remember writing in the morning that I was feeling stressed. Why I was feeling like that? And just thinking about that, it's very important.
Yeah, I was going to even say, for the journal and the daily reflection, one of the things that I would do was write down, like you said, Carabelle, exactly how I was feeling, right? So if I was, and I would write down the times, which was very interesting. So, because you're just writing how you feel in the time, what it allowed me to do is see a pattern. And so I was able to go back for the week and say, wow, in the morning, I was feeling really cranky every morning. Why was that? And then it hit me. Oh my goodness. I had stopped my routine of getting up to pray in the morning, right? I actually had stopped my routine of, I had started a gratitude journal. Like you said, you and your husband do that. And I actually write it down. I was like, oh my goodness, it makes complete sense. And that was kind of what changed my mood. But so when we're intentional about these things, it really does to help improve, how we're feeling throughout the day. So for sure, absolutely.
Yeah. And it is important for us to have that balance between our different hats. That's how I see it. Here, I'm a psychologist. In my house, I am a wife, I am a daughter. So I have different hats, and I have to balance all of those. So I have to enjoy those playful activities. Sometimes we can share with our families or with friends or with coworkers. And sometimes we are there, but our mind is still in the work area and thinking about how to provide something, you know? Sometimes we have to be aware, you know what, this time is for me to be feeling pleasure. Being physical, you know what? Practice yoga, walking. It could be everything that you want to do. Being physical could be, you know what? Every 2 hours when I finish working, I'm gonna go out and walk around the block. Just doing that, it's something of being physical.
Mhm.
Staying hydrated, so that's very good. You know what? I have water in my desk, always, always. You will always see this because it is very important to us to drink water, to understand, you know what? I haven't drank water in a little bit. So that's very important to us. Being able to establish a schedule. I know that for teachers, sometimes it's very difficult. My mom was a teacher, so when she gets out of school, then she will go home and she will do a lot of other stuff that teachers do. And it's very lovely, but you know, you have to schedule things. And I remember my mom saying, oh, I have to correct this, but then I will sit down with you and watch a movie. So that's very important. Avoid overloaded from media. Sometimes if things are happening, we just keep looking in all the news that is happening about this. And sometimes we just need a step back and not being able to be so much time doing that. Watch a movie, read a book, see a series. You can do different things. Read or go to your local library also, exercise. So go to a gym. It is very important to go into the gym and go out there. And connection. Connection has been very difficult this last year because we won't be able to really, really see each other. But you know what? We have a lot of media at this moment. I remember with my friends doing Zoom meetings with our families. Even my grandmother learned how to do face to face and all these things because it is very important for us. So being able to be there for our friends, for our family, group meetings, group activities. You know what? If you have an important day with your family, it is good to ask your friend, you know what? I remember your daughter graduated, or you know what? I know that you have your family at home. How was things going on? How is your brother? How is this? Because it is important to us to have that connection. And to see, being able to share with other people is going to be very important in that aspect.
Absolutely. And even thinking about that with your practices as a staff on an ongoing basis. You know, if you're starting your professional, before you start your professional developments, what type of community connector can you do? You know, if it's, you know, before your professional learning communities, you know, or your grade level meetings, you know, what are some community connectors or what are some mindfulness activities we can do? Again, like building those things and incorporating them into, you know, like making it become our gold standard for just how we do things, and how we are, you know, creating communities of compassion within our schools.
That's going to be very, very helpful. So now that we have already talked about all these indicators, we were able to see them. We talk about our importance of self-care and the awareness, the connection. So it is in the balance. So it's going to be very important to have our self-care plan. So what do that means? We have to see it like a complete whole. We have to see it our body, our mind, our emotions, our relationship, spiritually, and work. We have to see each part of it. And we have to see what I'm doing right now for self-care and what can I do a little bit more to have that self-care. I'm going to provide you my example. For my body, I wasn't able to do that much physical. So I said, you know what? I'm going to just try to do something, just dancing 3 times a week. And you know what I do? I just do it in my house. I put music and I dance by myself. And that's something physical for my body. I'm moving my body that I didn't do it. In my mind, I used to meditate a lot. Then I moved and it was kind of difficult to, I was trying to unpack and keep working. And it was kind of difficult in that process. You know what? Yesterday I said, no, I have to have again my space to meditate. And I just give 10 minutes for that part. And now I schedule it again this morning. It was like, before I start this webinar, I have to meditate. That's part of my day, just to schedule intentionally. Emotions, you know what? It is very important. Sometimes in our work, we feel stressed out, we can feel anger, we can feel frustrated. And it's okay to feel those things. But what I'm going to do with that? In my case, when I feel like that, I color. So I already have that in my house. If I'm out from work and my husband seeing me looking for my coloring book, he just give me that space and he knows that I need that space for me to switch my emotion and to feel that. Relationship, you know what? It's not only with your husband or with your wife or with your personal relationship, romantic, it's also with you, with your family, with your co-workers. Is that relationship that you build with the moment and how that relationship can still be there. You know, I have a couple of friends that we are together in a group message. We don't talk every day, but you know what? Once a month, somebody will write how everybody's feeling, how are things going on. And that's the part that we need to have that connection. Spiritual, you know, we are able to go to church or we are able to meet with each other, being able to pray, being able to have that space, because sometimes if we have other stuff, we lose that space, that connection, and it's very important. Also in work, we have all that, we have what we need to do, we have those to-do lists, we have everything that we want to do, but also we have to put self-care. You know what? I'm going to incorporate now a gratitude journal to my kids. I'm going to incorporate how we're feeling. No, every time we're going to go from outside to inside, I'm going to ask my group, how are they feeling? Because that's part of our self-care plan.
Yep.
And that's something that we can provide that to our co-workers, for the people that are around us, that it's going to be very, very helpful.
Yeah. And as adults, I feel like we schedule everything else, right? Think about it. If you have a wedding to go to, you schedule that, right? If you know what time you need to be at work, if there's a meeting, we schedule it. But when it comes to our self-care, we don't generally do that. And I think we have to be just as intentional about that as well. I'm going to schedule this 30-minute block of time before I start my day, or I'm going to, schedule that 20-minute block of time at the end of the day, to make sure that I'm doing these things. And I guarantee you will start to see a difference in how you feel and how you feel. So listen, we know technology has been our best friend since the pandemic, but there are so many amazing resources that are available, that are wellness or self-care resources, that are apps that we can find on our phones. I think the even a better thing, honestly, is that a lot of these resources are offered to educators for free. So I know when the pandemic first started, they recognized, that educators were doing so much, to make sure that our children were still thriving in a virtual learning community. And so they decided to make these things available free of charge. So Headspace, the Calm app, there's something called My Gratitude Journal. I think it's just all about preference. Like I said, for me, I love to write those things down. Like I love to physically have a book, but they do have these things that are available electronically as well. So in terms of like, and I know I mentioned this before, but I can't emphasize it enough, and just in terms of helpful organizational practices, because I think that if we don't start to think, from this organizational perspective, that we will continue on this hamster wheel. And I think it's really important for all of us to try to hold each other accountable, and then to create spaces and communities of compassion. And so I've seen some schools, I've actually worked with some schools to kind of develop these things. And I think Carabelle mentioned that. So one of them is a self-care accountability buddy system, right? We're making sure that you have somebody, a colleague or a coworker that you can trust, that you guys hold each other accountable. Incorporating mindfulness practices into the school day. I know one school I was working with, they would actually, I think it was like once or twice a day, and this was obviously before the pandemic, but they would have like mindful moments that would come over the loudspeaker. And that was just a moment for everybody in the building to pause and have this like mindful moment of reflection. So there's also things, like I said before, in terms of creating spaces within your meetings or your trainings, before your meeting or after your training, just making it a standard of practice that we start off with a mindfulness activity. Maybe we end the meeting with a gratitude activity. And then I've even had some schools create workplace or self-care groups or clubs, which I think is even more amazing. And I think when you bring a team of folks together that understand the importance of this, it naturally just takes off. And that's how we really start to develop those communities of compassion within the school setting. And lastly, there's one strategy that I love. It's called the tap in, tap out system. So in one of the schools that I was working with, anytime a teacher or a staff member was feeling overwhelmed, there was a text chain that they created through their cell phones, and anybody could but basically text this number, and it would send it to either a school counselor or somebody that maybe was available during that time to be able to come in and give that teacher a break, and give them about 10 or 15 minutes. So again, like all of these little strategies and all of these other little things really does help to kind of alleviate that burnout that we're talking about, right? That compassion fatigue that we're talking about. And then here are just some additional resources, some books that you can find on like Amazon, or you could probably even find at your local library. It's the Teacher Self-Care Manual. And then there's another one called 180 Days of Self-Care for Busy Educators, which is an awesome resource as well. So we'll open it up for questions, but I love this quote. It's one of my favorite quotes, and it just says, when you put the work out the way it's supposed to be, and you've been completely empty, someone that you touch will replenish you. And I think that is so true when it comes to educators. It's like just in that moment when you feel like you've given everything that you have, you hear from a student that you may have impacted, right? Or somebody from the school community tells you, thank you so much. You really helped me this day. I was struggling. And just want to leave you with that, because I know that the last year has been incredibly exhausting. And just say that we certainly appreciate all the hard work that you do. And so we'll open it up for questions, but I think one of the very important housekeeping things is our survey. And Kati, I think I'll turn this over to you, just if you want to let folks know about the survey.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Again, thank you. And thank you, Christy and Carabelle, for leading us into this self-care overview, which is very important for educators, especially now that we're transitioning into most of a post-COVID time. So as Christy had mentioned, we do, and I had mentioned earlier in the beginning, we do have an evaluation component. Our network is funded through SAMHSA, and as part of receiving this funding, we're required to submit data related to the quality of this event. So if you use your smartphone, you can scan over the QR code, and also I will share the link that you see in the screen in the chat box. That evaluation will also lead you to, well, first is a survey that our funders require, and then it will redirect your screen over to another survey, a more extended one. In that one, you can enter in your comments, ideas, or any feedback that you have. It's more open-ended. So again, all of these evaluation surveys are anonymous. They're not, it does not record any of your identifying information. So we thank you in advance for completing them. And then also another note I wanted to mention is that we will be emailing this link again in a follow-up email. And then within about 5 days, you will see the recording of this webinar posted onto our website. I will send a link out for that. And also on our website, you'll see our slide deck for your review, as well as the protocol documents and any other relevant resources that our presenters would like to add. And then a certificate of completion will also be attached to that email. My contact information, I'll put it in the chat box right now. If the presenters could also put your contact information, if you have any questions or if you'd like to contact them for any further questions. I'm putting mine in now. Here's, okay. So I will turn it over to Christine Carabel, who will conclude this portion of the webinar. I just want to thank everyone again for joining us.
I just wrote my email also for everybody. If you have any questions or anything you want to share with me, you can write me an email. It is also something very important to us to, you know what, something that I do with my schools that I work here in Puerto Rico is providing like a gratitude to everybody, saying what are the good things that you have done in that semester. That it's very helpful, like to each other, like a change gratitude. You know what? I remember the day that I was sick and you were the first one to ask me, or you were able to provide me with that aspirin that I needed, or that glass of water, or that 5 minutes break. So that's very important also. If you have any questions, any doubts, just you can be able to write them in the chat and we can talk to you. And
yes, absolutely. And if you're interested about, hey, Christy, how do we incorporate these things, or how do we develop these things, even in thinking about, shifting back to in-person learning next year. We are always happy to engage. And, if you send us an email, we do respond. And so, more than happy to provide you with ideas or suggestions to kind of incorporate these practices into into your day-to-day.
And also, if you feel that somebody else, it will be beneficial to them to have this webinar. It is also, you can also provide them with our email so they can contact us, so we can provide them with this webinar also. So share if you need it, if you need to contact us, it is very helpful in that process.
So if folks don't have questions, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to, being able to work with you all again, hopefully in the near future. And like Carabel said, thank you so much. And, please don't hesitate to contact us with any additional questions.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye now.
Take care, everyone.